right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we got kind of a weird one. Normally, I wouldn't cover a movie like this, but it just seemed like it had to be done. And also, my buddy Q, who you've heard on the show, and you know I also had a political podcast called Bird Road with for a number of years, which is on one of our many extended hiatuses at the moment. He has a new podcast called Why Are We Like This? And it drops this week. The first 3 episodes are coming out this week. And so I've got Q and one of his co-hosts, Gerry Doherty, to talk about the right-wing propaganda film My Son Hunter, about Hunter Biden. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's as bad as you would imagine it would be. But we had a lot of fun talking about it. And, since I was stuck watching this thing for 90 minutes, we might as well get some content out of it. This episode, of course, will be very political as we dig into all of the things that this movie tries to, all the gotcha bits and stuff like that this movie tries to do on the Bidens. But there's plenty to talk about. So we'll get into all that in a minute. Before we do, I want to remind you, as always, to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever it is you listen to podcasts. And, of course, you can follow us on social media at PiecingPod. And this week, actually, at the time this goes up, tomorrow, I will be in Glendale, California at the Look Dine-In Cinema doing a live Piecing It Together after a screening of See How They Run, sponsored by Cinema Week. And there are links in the show notes to where you can RSVP for free tickets. And also, hopefully, you've seen all of our social media posts about it over the last week or two. But yeah, I'm very excited about this live show. It will be up on the Piecing It Together feed next week. But there's still time if you want to come out to the show. Hope to see you tomorrow. So with that said, let's talk about My Son Hunter. All right, I'm here with my buddy Q and Gerry Doherty from Why Are We Like This, the podcast that just dropped this week. And it's Q's new podcast. Q, first of all, thank you for being back. Gerry, thank you for being here. Before we start getting into this ridiculous movie that you made me watch, tell the listeners a little bit about the new podcast.
Yeah, Why Are We Like This is a Florida-focused podcast. It is a what we like to call the first and only true crime podcast that is only about Florida and treats Florida like the active crime scene that it is. Now, it's not going to sound all the time like a true crime show. It's we kind of use that as a foot to get in the door, to talk about a lot of issues facing us down here, and as Gerald is fond of saying, Florida is basically like microdosing the United States. So anything that happens down here, laugh at it today, make fun of us today all you want, but get ready because it's coming to your neck of the woods pretty soon.
Sure. Gerry, Q's been on the show many times before. We've known each other forever. Did Q just do a good job of introducing the show to everybody?
Yeah, I would say if you like listening to an autopsy of someone who is still technically alive, this is basically like that. Is Florida dead? Not literally, but spiritually. Sure. You do have to deaden yourself in order to
if you could do an autopsy by watching an episode of Faces of Death from your couch, it would be that's what it is. It's oh damn, those testicles don't look right. There's something wrong happening there.
Yeah, whenever things would skew Florida-based when we were doing Bird Road episodes, it was always what is going on over there? This is just... Everything was just either depressing or weird or just...
Sorry, Dave. Not everybody can have their shit together like Las Vegas, Nevada.
Like Las Vegas, Nevada. Yeah. Absolutely. We're doing great over here, guys.
Not everyone can be as calm and normal as the Vegasinians.
Well, speaking of calm and normal, let's talk about the movie that we're here to talk about, My Son Hunter, which I certainly had no intention of actually getting around to. We of course made fun of it all over the place. Who isn't making fun of it? But Q thought it would be a fun one to talk about, and I am glad that I watched it. I mean,
really,
I am. Yeah, I mean, Look, it looked terrible from the trailers, but it looked like, and I said this in my Letterboxd review too, you kind of have to grade stuff like this on a curve because,
yes.
It's a small, independent, no-budget movie. These people they don't have.
They're starving
Yeah,
artists.
they are. They're starving artists.
Well,
They have no money
except
to
for the
pay.
guy who played Joe, he didn't look starving. He looked well fed. He was doing great. Gina
Yeah,
Carano looked pretty.
he's
Gina
doing
Carano
all
looked
right.
pretty
Fed.
well fed too. But Gina Carbano.
Yeah, well, the Joe Biden guy's from Dynasty, so he's got that daytime TV money. But this movie, I was certainly curious, and so because of that, I'm happy I can like at least check it off the list. But it's awful. I mean, there's no question about that, and it's propaganda. It's ridiculous. It's very like mixed up in what it's even trying to say, I think, in trying to attack the Bidens. I mean, you guys are certainly more politically minded than I am. I mean, let's before we start getting into like, we'll talk a few puzzle pieces here and there as well, but like, do you think it did a good job at all of attacking its target?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say this. Like, so I was aware of this movie when they were still crowdfunding for it.
Mhm.
They announced that they were trying to raise money from, and God bless them for knowing that people would crowdfund to the tune, I think, of $2.5 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Was the total budget for the film. I don't know if all of that came from crowdfunding. So I was aware that there was a movie in production called My Son Hunter, with had a very but it had a very pulpy, like, John McDonald's like whodunit kind of, but like with strippers and like Hunter with the, it had something of like a noir feel, a sense of danger to it that I feel like you got maybe a little bit of taste in the beginning, and then once it turns into therapy session, it's just completely gone for the most part. So I would say it was disappointing in that I was hoping for something of a mix between like Triple X and Uncut Gems of like a Howard Ratner style figure trying to like do well among like very dangerous Eastern European. Like if you replace like Vin Diesel with the Adam Sandler character, where he's like doing deals and steals, but also crying about how fucked up he is. I was expecting something like that, which would be fun.
Yeah.
All they did was make him seem like, not the best party host in the world.
Sure.
Like someone who like invites
a little bit of a brat,
just like
a little bit of a brat.
Not in keeping with what any of the because people have interviewed those who have like interacted with Hunter Biden. All the strippers that have been interviewed by him say that he's like I think one quote directly was, he's the perfect customer. Like asking her about like her aspirations or whatever, like, like, what do you want to do with your life or whatever. And like, I think at minute 5, he's like screaming at everyone to get out of his house because they're all using her or whatever. Not in keeping with like the actual like record that we have of Hunter Biden. I was expecting to see something more, and you got a little flavor of it, of a tortured soul, someone who knows, but like never really wrestling with it, just like stating to hot people that he's a big disappointment and continuing with his behavior anyway, but never really wrestling with it in a way. Like, I will be honest, I would interview Hunter Biden. I find him to be a very fascinating character. I feel like anyone who's ever had a friend go through addiction knows someone who's maybe not as wealthy and well connected and protected and insulated as Hunter Biden. But I feel like everyone who's known an addict knows a Hunter Biden. Yeah. I feel like he would be a rich character to dive into in the like modern American tapestry. And I'm disappointed that more was not done, because to your point, it just focused on like, how can we jazz up our supporters for the midterms, basically, like was kind of the how do we goose them on their way to the polls is basically the point of.
And maybe Dave, for some of the folks who are listening, who like, it might help to level set like what's going on here. If maybe you're not as if your brain hasn't been as poisoned as ours has from like politics and Twitter and shit. But this movie is a conservative project. It was made by a bunch of people who are generally ideologically conservative. And it is exactly what Gerald just said. It's like it's a propaganda movie that is supposed to be focused on, if you aren't familiar with this story, Hunter Biden, famous failed son of Joe Biden, just like every failed son and every failed daughter out there, getting these cushy landing spots at all of these different multinational jobs, NGOs, things like that, 6-7 figure paydays. And he had a laptop that contained a lot of information about, incriminating in some cases information about various jobs that he had working, with organizations in Ukraine, China. So like it's gunning at that little controversy. It really wants to like focus on that and the media's ignoring of it during the 2020 election season, which the media did, and a lot of technology companies acquiesced in that way. Like they would restrict. I remember this was
Companies like Giglio, are you talking about?
yeah, Giglio. I can't find this
Giglio
anywhere on
search engine.
I can't find this anywhere on Galuglio. And it's like, oh well, you got to start looking on the real internet. We got to put you on the onion router.
Yeah.
What our third host on Why Are We Like This is Tomas Kennedy, and he couldn't make it today, but he made the great point when we were at dinner the other night. He was saying like, why are conservatives going to make this movie where they're just making Hunter Biden look cool as shit? And he does not just that. I was surprised.
Yes.
Because they also made him on the scene, and we'll get into the scenes and stuff, but like there's a big hunk at the beginning of the movie where first of all, Laurence Fox is a good actor. He's a damn good actor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and he was good in this role, working with absolute dog shit writing. And the scene where he's on the couch for a solid 15 minutes with the exotic dancer he's playing opposite of, he like really endears empathy. He emotes, and I feel bad for him. And I'm like, aren't they supposed to hate this guy? And I definitely did not walk away. First of all, yeah, there are a lot of scenes where, to Tomas's point, like, yeah, he seems cool. They made him out to be really cool. And then there are times where you really do feel bad for him, and he lays out the cry of the rich kid, the cry of the fail son. It's like everybody just like hates me, and I'm always failing and fucking up, and I felt bad for him, and I was not expecting. That couch scene I thought was the most capably made part of the movie. It like actually looked like a real movie. And most of these movies, Dave, like I know you guys don't usually do them on this show, but like most of these movies can only barely be called movies. Like they look like you see boom mics in the shot. You see like actors just it's like very Tommy Wiseau type shit. It's like the actor just changes character in the middle of the movie. This is a capably, competently made bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say like the script. I made a note like because the production. Also, like for those who aren't going to watch it, which first I also want to say I don't know how you guys watch the movie. I bought it from Breitbart. Got an email saying I had to be redirected to the original website to confirm that I purchased the movie. Had to hit activate code, which would send a code to my email, a 6-digit code to my email that I would then enter. I felt like I was living in a Tim and Eric like product, like promo, basically for a revolutionary new way to shittily watch a movie.
The Cinco company, brought to you by the Cinco company.
Yeah, the Cinco film. Yes. I want to say, given who the target audience of this movie was, this is a form of elder abuse. So, like, before we can say anything else, fix your fucking website so that people could just click a link and be brought to the movie. You could host the movie on your page and just have it pass.
You guys are getting a little insight into how it feels to be a film critic, by the way, because every time you get a screener, it's like this. It's a nightmare.
They treated the entire general market like we're all like I was expecting it to have like a watermark with my email address on it or some shit.
Yeah. Before socialist politics were even viable, I was a Nader supporter and a Nader voter. And the inner what's left of the consumer protection part of my soul was screaming out that like the public needs to be warned about how shitty the way you navigate this website. It's like someone needs to make an intervention. But I made a note because, like you said, the production values are very good.
Yeah,
the sets are very good. The lighting, very good, especially like you said, when we're comparing it to other conservative films. But the script is, and I love my brother very dearly, but when we were children, like you would write out like plays and scenarios for us to perform for our family. And I said, this does feel like if you gave 5-year-old Braden $2.5 million to make a movie about Hunter Biden, and like people just announcing like, what do you know? I'm in real bad with China. What do you know about China? more than you think. All right, and then just smoking crack, and then that transports you to China.
And then his dad is angry at him. And then you see the girl's boobies, but not all of them. You just see some of the boobies. Yeah, it's like a fight.
You see the bare of a woman's back, which is more than I've ever seen in a conservative film ever.
Well, this is an edgy film. I mean, like you invoked Uncut Gems earlier. I mean, this is trying to like be a character that's like really over the top and really exciting in a weird way. Like it's weird because like, and to throw a puzzle piece in here, I think this is like one of the most obvious ones. I think people were saying this back when the trailer came out. The Wolf of Wall Street. I mean,
trying very hard.
Yeah. I mean, the excess, the greed, the entitlement, but it's all being demonized in that same way, but somehow it's only bad because Democrats are doing it. Like, no Republican or conservative would ever live this way or be associated with any of this kind of thing.
My argument to that would be it's only bad because Robert Davi's not Martin Scorsese. That's the reason it's only bad.
Well,
because you know what?
Yeah.
Give some version of this script to Martin Scorsese. Let him do what Martin Scorsese does. This is a damn good movie. This could be a damn good movie.
Like I said, like the tapestry is rich for a Hunter Biden, like someone who, like, I mean, it's an American archetype, like someone who like is constantly rescued through like wealth and connection from like his own incompetence or like inability to get out of his own way, constantly failing upwards. I forget who said it, but like Wolf of Wall Street, like you said, David. In the financial press, I forget it was the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times, but I remember the coverage of audience reactions to Wolf of Wall Street because I thought I was very on a knife edge when I saw that trailer because I was like, we're 5 years removed from the crash of 2008 and we're making this type of a movie. I was like, this could go many different ways. The reaction in Lower Manhattan, again, I forget which of the papers it was, people who work in day trading cheering on Leo DiCaprio when he slips the note that says "I'm wearing a wire" to Jonah Hill because he was like that. Like, yes, you protect your people, like you protect, like because that's what they would do in the situation. For the voters, yes, like this is a way to jazz them up and goose them and make them feel like like they got to have a little treat, before Halloween and Election Day. For RNC operatives, I'm going to guarantee that even though Hunter Biden is on the other side of the aisle, they were rooting for him too because Hunter Biden is known because of his last name. Hunter Biden types are dime a dozen in politics, like the protected, connected family member who is, addicted to that access, addicted to what it gets him because he could never get it on his own anyway, or at least not last very long doing it. I have to think even among like RNC operatives watching this movie would say, oh, damn, that reminds me of Cousin Tony or whatever the fuck.
The thing where this falls apart and where a movie that could have been like joking around about it being like a good, like somebody like Martin Scorsese getting their hands on this topic, like we can just say right now the Hunter Biden movie hasn't been made yet, and it will be one day, and it'll be good. But the core issue is that like with this kind of like conservative sort of like propaganda, it always falls apart. It's the same thing with conservative comedy. It falls apart because they're so focused on like working through their own neuroses, their preoccupations, their grudges. They always rush the punchline. They can't do anything subtly. It all has to be like a little wink at, like they need that Greek chorus Gina Carano character to look at the camera and be like, damn, these guys are scumbags, right, everyone? Like they need that. They have to force the bit too much. And you would never catch like what is the legacy of Wolf of Wall Street? The legacy of Wolf of Wall Street is the argument over, wait, does Martin Scorsese endorse this? Does he like this? Or like everybody's still fighting. The fact that people don't know is the brilliance of that movie. Because that's evidence that he nailed it. Like a great Hunter Biden movie would be one where you walk away and you're like, do they like Hunter Biden or not like him? And like that is where all conservative media, all conservative creative projects, all reactionary creative work and art in my opinion, falls apart because it has to force its point. It has to shoehorn it in, and it takes away anything that could be perceived as ambiguity, anything that could be like maybe subtlety, and it makes it so obvious that it removes that field of play where art happens, and it turns into just propaganda. And that's what this movie really was. And it blew a chance because everything else was there. Like it did look good.
I mean, early in the conversation with the dancer, was her name Gina Anderson?
Grace Anderson.
Grace Anderson, yeah.
Grace Anderson. Talking about like Bo and losing his mind, and like, but not going in like they treated that very, I thought, very delicately. Like they were not like trying to make him out like this like Frankenstein monster of trauma. Like they were very clearly like pointing to the like, had you walked in his shoes, you might very well end up the same way. Basically, like if you had a lot of misfortune come your way, married to a lot of wealth, power, access, what have you, you might quite easily have ended up the same way. And then, like you said, by the end, just maniacally laughing about how, the laptop man is a Trumpster. We're going that way. The impeachment vote. Oh, I'm off scot-free. And that's when, might as well have like the devil horns like come out of his head at that moment. Like it really did, like it was dancing on a line, and not even very well, but at least like it was carrying itself along. And then by the end, it's like, okay, now this is just like black and white cardboard cutout. I'm glancing at my watch, like I'm not.
When the purportedly liberal, because she starts off the movie inexplicably in the middle of like a Black Lives Matter protest for some reason. When the stripper is it's like this purportedly liberal character, like like you say, Jared, like a cutout of like what a conservative thinks a liberal is, and she's like, oh, they're talking about everything having to do with the laptop, and at one point they're talking with this other sort of expositional character, Tyrone, who only exists to be exposition, and she goes, but wait, that's Russian disinformation. And she's sitting there, a stripper, dressed like a stripper, at her client's house, being a stripper, being a sex worker, and using the phrase Russian disinformation. And I'm like, this is really what like these people think. Like
It is funny that they think that the security detail for these politicians are all going on DuckDuckGo and like watching InfoWars. Like it is funny to think that, and that if they were ever in a room with a stripper, they would try to get them on like maybe Sandy Hook didn't really happen the way we.
I have this written down as a note that I wanted to like address too, like the because we were talking about, and Jerry made a really great point, because like the one. I think the most important characteristic of Hunter Biden is how ununique he is. How every single
we only know him because of his name, but Washington D.C. is
riddled with those guys. And the typical like liberal talking point whenever you talk about Biden, Hunter Biden, but specifically like in this movie, is always like, oh, the Trump kids are just as corrupt and they did like worse stuff, and Eric stole from kids with cancer, which is true, and Ivanka gives bribes to China for her like her patents and everything, and that's true. And like Jared, I don't know, like sold white slaves or whatever. I don't know what the fuck.
666 Fifth Avenue could be its own
fucking movie. It could be its own anthology on HBO, like that Room 4 or 404 or whatever.
Whatever deal they made with the Qataris to take it off their hands.
But those things are probably true to some extent, but like it's everyone, whoever it is that you think that like whatever your political fandom is, like that guy or girl's kid is probably in some way or another experiencing the same thing. Like they're probably going through the same, because and I think actually one of the successes of the movie, one of the few successes of the movie, is where they show almost how unavoidable this was for just a normal person to end up this way. Bo Biden had to be like Jesus Christ walking on water to be Bo Biden. And what did it get him? An early, like, I mean, he still just died as a young man, right? Hunter Biden was the frailty that we all have. And we probably would all be that way. Like, and or at least most of us. And in that situation, and I got to tell you, I was not expecting that. And I don't think that Robert Davi intended for that to come out in the movie so much but that's what I stepped away thinking, is like, this could be, anybody whose father or mother is in some prominent position in American politics, because we don't have royalty
Yeah.
We have fail sons and fail daughters.
To that point, another puzzle piece I'm going to throw in there, and one that I think the movie is like totally not getting to, but maybe was on the mind. Oliver Stone's W from 2008 about George W. I think it's certainly trying to, be that kind of a movie.
Yeah.
But again, like, he's portrayed as like so unspecial, just a regular. There's nothing to him.
You know what,
in
though?
any way.
I'll say that's like, in my opinion, that's lesser Oliver Stone, and perfect example,
sure.
a great comp for this movie, honestly, because it's the same thing where Oliver Stone did the great sin in that movie of letting you know exactly how he feels about the character, and when you walked out of the movie, you were like, okay, I know how I'm supposed to think about. I don't know. I was like 28 or whatever when that movie came out, and then like I walk out and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to hate George Bush. I mean, I'm 28 and I'm unemployed, so like I already hate him. And but yeah,
and Green Day told me to.
Green Day told me that he's an American idiot. So yeah, that's a good one. Do you want to get into the puzzle pieces, Dave?
Just throw them out when you got them. This is going to be so super loose because of what the movie is, but yeah, I think actually the way that you were just making that, I'm realizing that W is actually a better piece than I even thought it was when I wrote it down. So
that's a good comp.
Yeah, so. That should definitely be in there. What do you have, though? Do you have a good one you want to throw out there?
On the heels of W, I'm going to tell you that if you want to watch a truly great movie that is like My Son Hunter, a movie that movie wishes that it was, I would say check out 2018's Loro. Have either of you heard of this movie? Loro?
No, never heard of it.
So
no.
Loro was directed by Pablo Sorrentino, who you might have you've seen La Gran Belleza or The Young Pope. The new Pope, he did both of those.
Yep.
It's this lightly fictionalized life story of Sergio Berlusconi, former president of Italy. Like, we think that we broke the mold with Donald Trump. No, Italy had the original Donald Trump. It was Silvio Berlusconi, and it is this high concept, slick, super stylized, like very bombastic. If you've ever watched any Pablo Sorrentino, this guy has like an impeccable eye. Like, he is an incredible filmmaker. And it's this movie where you realize like how weird and perverse the political polarities outside of the US are. Like, you get to see the way that the parties and what passes for conservative, what passes for liberal, what passes for socialist in other countries. You see the difference of like kind of how they're defined. And it's another situation where you have this choice. You can kind of be like so bitterly obsessed with the minutia of the scandal in your little backyard. Like, that's one thing about Hunter, the movie, is that you've got to know so much like Reddit, QAnon bullshit to like even grasp a bunch of the references that they're making. Like, a lot of the stuff you otherwise it's just going to wash over you. Or you can...
Well, to be fair, if you have any friends or family who are on that side, they will tell you these things every chance they get.
Loudly.
So you kind of pick up some of it.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that, or you can just be blissfully unaware and kind of engage with it like it's a movie. Loro is a movie where you don't need to know like every micro detail of Berlusconi's life to be able to, be like the Leonardo DiCaprio, like, oh, there it is. That's the part where he fucked a stripper, Like, you don't have to know all that. You can just let the movie kind of wash over you. It's very like artistically daring. It looks the way that Robert Davi wished that the Hunter movie looked. It's clever the ways that he wishes that it was clever. It's dirty in the ways that he wishes he was allowed to be dirty, because I don't know if you guys caught this, but like they couldn't go like whole hog the way that this movie really wanted to go whole hog, and they couldn't, because they really do think that, they're conservative. They imagine families watching this movie. So 2018's Loro, which was it's on Amazon right now. It's great. It's like the way that like most Italian American filmmakers try to be like actual Italian filmmakers, and they just like fall short. Robert Davi, I'm not even going to check. I'm pretty sure he's Italian. Like, he's an Italian American guy. I'm just going to say it because I'm pretty sure. If not, he spiritually is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, good one. I want to see that movie. That sounds really good.
It's a fucking great movie.
I haven't seen it.
It's a sin you haven't seen that movie. It was really good.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and so I'm gonna have to check that out for sure. Jerry, do you got a piece you want to bring up?
Not exactly a movie or a show. Early in the movie, before any of the even Hunter Biden stuff even gets started, they set December 2019, and there's this massive BLM
Yeah.
protests
Mhm.
going on, which I was alive during December 2019, and there was no such thing. But okay. I also, by the way, I was like, is Hunter Biden at this protest? And no, there's nothing. There's
Yeah.
Just
nothing
mixing shit
about
up.
BLM or anything.
And they could have made it, Jen.
But
They could have made it in May 2020. Like the timeline would have
There's no
worked
reason
fine.
not to.
Like they
yes, even better.
it would have been it would have made
better.
fucking sense. Why make it 2019? I mean, they were just
because in December 2019, Biden is like, remember, like Bloomberg is just like getting his gears ready. Like there's not a lot of Biden momentum in December 2019. The idea that this is a high stakes situation for Joe Biden and not people
or Warren,
Bernie Sanders or whoever else, Warren, again, it baffled me. But what baffled me even more, like we said, how do conservatives imagine liberals to be? I would like to add, because I don't think they've ever met another. How do they even talk to each other? There are two protesters at the
this is hilarious.
At the BLM protest. In December 2019, we were all there. You remember December 2019? We were all doing it. They take a video, they duck away to the side, and the conversation is as follows. I think I got a viral video. I'm going to trend. Let me see. You can't post this video, Grace. It'll make the protest look bad. Dramatic music inserted. So a puzzle piece I would offer is Saved by the Bell, which is how these people talk in the movie is at the level of preteen friendly, like school comedy.
Zach and Screech talking about
that. Yes, that level of dialogue will carry you through the film, even once we get to Hunter and the stripper. They all still will talk to each other like preteens.
It's so true. And like, even in my Letterboxd review, I talked about how like, we were talking earlier about how they can't like land any jokes or anything. Every joke is telegraphed with like a sitcom music cue. Like it's like boing,
There was literally a boing sound in the movie.
Dave, there was a scene where they where they're I don't remember exactly what happened, but like it was like you're tonally and Dave knows this. Dave makes music. He's a composer. He's done a lot of films. He's he's made a lot of soundtracks. And the sound can be as effective as like lighting. It can be as effective as composition and like setting tone. It felt like there were times that I felt like I was sitting. There was one specific time, and I wrote this down, where I went from sitting watching like a Scorsese movie. It's like somebody pulled me into a theater next door, and I was watching a John Hughes movie out of nowhere. And I'm just, it felt like all of a sudden I was watching Home Alone, and it was like, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Is this like The Mask or something? I thought I was watching like a serious political thriller, and that kind of stuff can work, but it didn't work the way that they did it.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't. It was not fucking good.
No. There was another moment also, and maybe it's on the mind because of the debt relief from last month, where, what's her name again? Sorry, Gina Anderson?
Grace Anderson.
Grace Anderson, sorry, Grace. Looks to the camera the minute we meet her and says, "Don't judge me. I'm doing this to pay off my college debt." And I, for the life of me, was like, are they making fun of precarious young people?
Precarious young sex workers. What of the joke?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, there's no reason for them to, like, for me to tell a conservative that, like, literally, like, the conversations that you'll have when you're dating with people are like, do you even want to have kids if climate change is going to happen? Or like comparing bad FICO scores or whatever, because they'll just think it's funny. So there's no reason to like even advertise it to them, because it'll just be used as fodder for their comedic. You'll just end up on
conservatives.
I'm pretty sure people call them student loans in real life.
Yeah,
but,
and conservatives will see the scene, like any scene like that, and just be like, people suffering without having money. That must suck for you.
They love that shit.
Yeah, it sucks for you. It's funny, Jared, when you're talking about that, because like I have one note written about her, and it's about the last time that we see her, and my note is: movie ends with a 37-year-old woman calling a 45-year-old man who just broke into her house daddy, and hugging him in reconciliation, like where her dad comes in at the end and she's like, daddy, and it's like, you're 37. That guy is maybe your older brother. Like
my favorite is the 37-year-old stripper with her dad is the only lawyer who would never do anything unethical ever, and yet like
Jesus, how'd that work out for you, pal?
Like, what a family,
sweetheart. You know that I save all of my personal failings for fatherhood. Just
yeah.
Well, I'll go on to another one
Dave.
here.
You go. Your turn.
You know what? Before I bring it up, I just wanted to ask you guys, because Q, you and I, we would joke around sometimes, like, for example, like, let's go Brandon, like that. We didn't even want to know what it means necessarily. We hear it and we're like, we don't want to go that far in. Like, how much of the laptop business do you even like pay attention to enough to even know about it?
I am familiar with what Burisma is, which is the company that, that came out of pocket to, get a preferential, I guess, sanction relief or something. It was like they got so Jerry, you probably know more than I do, honestly, but like they got so inside baseball with this shit. And again, this goes back to the thing where it's like you've got to be like 500 hours deep on QAnon Discord chats and shit like that to know all of this stuff. You've got to be so deep in the lore of like Laptop Gate or whatever. Like I will, this stuff to me, the equivalent of it on the Democrat side is all the Trump Russia stuff. You can never. I absolutely refuse to learn who Lev Parnas is. I will never know who Lev Parnas is.
Yeah.
And you can't make me learn it. Yeah. You can't make me learn any of that shit. And because none of it fucking matters. At the end of the day, none of it makes a difference. I don't know. Jared, do you know anything about like the were you aware of the laptop stuff when it was happening? I mean,
I was not aware of the actual interactions between like Hunter Biden as like a wheeler dealer or whatever. I was interested when they shut down Twitter
they censored the New York
Post. That was interesting to me because like I do like, and to be fair, never happened with any of the Steele dossier stories. Never happened with any of the Trump Russia stuff. Like it never But once it came to, and if I was a conservative, I would basically, that would be my throw in the towel moment of like, oh, like if someone says Trump did something bad, it's trending. But if someone says I have Hunter Biden's literal physical laptop, but it's just like I said, like receipts that are already filed with the government anyway, and some like, depending on who you ask, embarrassing or flattering selfies, we have to shut down the New York Post. Like, if I was a conservative, that would be my,
it's fair.
This is bullshit.
It's fair, but I will say this. Look, you can call, and conservatives have done this and continue to do this, and they're not wrong. You can call CNN, the New York Times, who were like the sort of the object of the ire of like who the big outlets that were, refusing to cover the story. Right. You can call them failing New York Times or the low rating CNN. You can call them irrelevant. You can say that they're biased, whatever. You can complain about also the disinformation storyline. And you can make the point that this movie makes, which is that like, if not for that, right? Because this movie imagines a different future at the end. Spoiler alert, Donald Trump wins re-election in this movie. You can do that, but you can't do both. Either the New York Times and CNN are irrelevant, aging fossil institutions that nobody gives a shit about, and they're like committed to some old guard liberalism that is irrelevant to people, or they change the course of the election. But it can't. I'm sorry. Like at some point, you got to pick one.
For sure,
absolutely.
I mean they will. I run into this. I have a lot of MAGA family members. I will run into this a lot where, for example, like Trump is this like alpha male god emperor figure who's like our last line of defense, between the forces of good and evil. And they'll say that there's a doctor down the hall who's committing crimes against humanity, in broad daylight, such that even our most illustrious like DIY Facebook documentarians could, solicit and distribute materials about how the evil Fauci and Bill Gates and Xi Jinping are all collaborating, and it's so easy that we can all see it here. And yet you have to ask then what was with all the joint press conferences that Trump and Fauci? Because if the guy works, if the most evil man in the world works down the hall from the most heroic man in the world, I think you could draw a line from A to B as to what's got to be done to protect him. And they will go back and forth. They would do it with Obama. They would be, he's a metrosexual gay pussy and also masterminding everything bad that happens in the United States government. Like he's effete.
Well, a lot of it is
like depending on how I need to goose myself.
A lot of it is like the Dinesh D'Souza stuff, like where it's like you've got the Dinesh D'Souza wing of conservatism that'll be like, oh well, that Democrats were actually the ones that pushed that were on the Confederate side of the Civil War, and that the Democrats are the original racists. And it's like, okay, man. So then what you're saying is like you guys don't like the Confederate flags because it's mostly Republicans like flying them today. Like, make up your fucking mind. Yeah. Like, which one is it? Like, are you guys into that or are you not into that? I mean, yeah,
it's just trolling.
It basically,
trolling. Like that is just like, yeah, like again, the Republican Party was not a conservative party in 1865. There was no conservatism in 1865. Like all of our politics were regional and about mode of economic reproduction, industrial, relying on child labor, plantation relying on slave labor, and that was the question of the day.
I will say a couple things that I thought were really great about the movie, Dave. Didn't it, like the beginning of the movie, didn't it, and I know you were going to give us another puzzle piece, Dave, but like, didn't the beginning movie remind you of the very first few commercials that they did for the What Happens in Vegas campaign back in, like, when was that? That launched in like 2003. Remember, we were kids and we were living in
a little mini piece there. Yeah.
It was like, it reminded me so much of, because, okay, these are like commercials that would run on network television and they would have to imply that there was dirty, filthy debauchery happening, but it was a commercial. They can't show it. So you would see like a pretty girl, like the outline of her leg. And I don't know, like you could just imagine that the table that she was passed out on had cocaine on it, but they wouldn't show the cocaine. Like it was like all of this, like kind of, it reminded me of those early, like what happens in And the other thing I want to say, Dave, you know that I'm a big critic of Hollywood. Like I always criticize the Hollywood the studio system. But seeing Gina Carano in this movie gave me a new appreciation. This is somebody who she worked with people like I think most recently she had a lot of attention for The Mandalorian, right? And
that was when she really blew up as a name.
Before that, she was in a movie where she was the star of a Steven Soderbergh movie. Justin Lin, right? He directed her and got a great performance out of her in one of the Fast and Furious movies. Even like a guy like Stephen C. Miller, very competent, very good director, right? This shows you how important the Hollywood machine is to take somebody that wooden and untalented and make them a star in a lot of movies.
Yeah, because there seems like there's nothing there when you see her in something like this. There's just nothing.
It's just like, what am I supposed to, like, maybe if like she pulled off the suit and started beating people up, it would be a little bit more fun, but that never happens. It's just implied that she's a badass and she never actually, and it's again another one of these wink and nod things. Like, you've got to know Gina Carano's history as a canceled person, a person of cancellation. And that is like you got to know the inside joke of what she is. You got to care about that to even give a shit that this wooden dummy is up on camera, like delivering these lines like she's literally reading them off of the palm of her fucking hand. And so that gives me a little bit more appreciation for that Hollywood. This movie could have used some notes, Dave. This movie could have used a few notes.
It could have used a few notes, and I feel like that's a thing with a lot of movies nowadays, but that's a whole other subject. But to bring it back to the reason why I was asking you about the laptop is because this is a bit of a stretch here, but my next puzzle piece is The Big Lebowski, because the briefcase was nothing all along, and Bunny kidnapped herself, and there's nothing there. Everything is set in motion by a story that is nothing. And that's why I'm like, do we even know anything about any of this?
I see what you're doing, and I'm still offended by it. I'm still insanely offended that you're bringing The Big Lebowski.
You know these people love The Big Lebowski. Come on. Just because it's a good movie, it could still be a puzzle piece.
Yeah, we all remember when Philip Seymour Hoffman would wink at the camera and be like, get a load of this guy, huh?
I'm thinking that this movie, this movie literally could have been directed by Walter Sobchak. Like, if you think about it, this is a
Yeah,
movie
pretty much.
that the real life Walter Sobchak probably would have directed. Yeah, I do have another puzzle piece.
Let's do it.
It's actually 3-in-1, and it's a movie that we talked about recently. I forget where we were, Jerry, but like we were talking about the Atlas Shrugged trilogy, 2011, 2012, and 2014, directed by Paul Johansson, then John Putch, and then some guy named James Manera. I have no idea how to pronounce his name. The first movie starred Taylor Schilling before Orange is the New Black, and then she pieced the fuck out for the other two movies. I think I was telling you and Tomas that I had watched these movies on the couch, like high out of my mind, half asleep at like 3 a.m. one random night. I honestly don't remember what happens in the third one. I assume that the rich people win. I don't know. So when people think that the reason that I wanted to bring this series of movies up, very flawed, very bad movies based off of a very flawed, very bad novel. This reminds me of like when people who think that they're smarter than they are try to make political statements through film, but without like really understanding what it is that they're trying to say. Like if you watch with 2021 cynicism, and I did this, I rewatched the first 20 minutes of the first Atlas Shrugged movie. If you rewatch it through the lens of like just a normal human being in the year 2022 that's gone through 2.5 years of governmental society-wide failure in the face of a global pandemic, like you watch this movie and you're like, oh, this is a socialist message. This is going to be like a message of socialism. And then and you're like, wow, they're going to get to, and you keep watching and you're like, oh, they're going to get to that pretty soon. Watch, all of these characters are going to get their comeuppance. And then it's like, no, the movie is positioning these characters to be right. They're like these, they're the ones that are correct in the framework of the context of the movie. It's very broad. It's very obvious, which also reminded me a lot of My Son Hunter. It has this sheen of a movie that seems like it should be artistic and subtle, and it's not. You keep waiting for it to be. You think it's hiding its message, and it's not. It's all text. None of it is subtext. And it's all just. It reminds me of like going back to conservative media, man. It reminds me of a lot of conservative media, which is just excuses to take your favorite memes and turn them into dialogue, and just like actually have characters speak them out loud. And Jer, I know you have experience with these kind of people. It comes from like that corner of conservatism, like that Ben Shapiro corner of conservatism that like really wants to be taken seriously and not be seen as like crazy crackpots and conspiracy theorists and like forced birth for 11-year-olds. It comes from that like bow tie conservatism as opposed to like MAGA cap conservatism. And and I know that the world is completely different than 2011 when that movie, the first one, came out. But like, I feel that like, please take us seriously. We're making a real case here, type of energy coming off this one.
So I never saw Atlas Shrugged, but I remember when it was, like we were saying, I remember when it was a big thing. It was around the time when like Ron Paul was a real like proto Bernie, like old man internet celebrity. Like I remember like never being able to watch a YouTube video about even like a cat without Ron Paul 2012 being the top comment. Like that, like Atlas Shrugged was having its moment at the right time. Culturally, if there was ever going to be a movie and like that and have it do well, that was the time. I know it was screened at Cornell. I went to Ithaca College. I know it was screened at Cornell, and the one person I know who went to see it was a fan of the book. Said they were disappointed by the film. And when I asked, was it like divorced from the text? They're like, no, it was just boring. I was like, so if it's if it's faithful to the text but it's boring, you're not exactly making a great case for the book, I have to tell you.
This is the thing where it's like they're so close. They're so close.
Well, pretty soon we're going to get a Zack Snyder Fountainhead adaptation. So,
oh my God, is he still working on that? Is that really going to happen?
That would at least be fun.
It'll at least be, it'll be a big ass movie with big special effects and well made, so it won't be like some shit show like this.
I didn't read the Fountainhead, and admittedly that like just like every 17-year-old, I read Atlas Shrugged. Like you do, and in America, if you're like a disaffected 17-year-old and you're white passing and you're a male, they just hand you a copy of Atlas Shrugged when you turn 18 and you have to read it.
Yeah.
But like, I don't remember even like the Cliff's Notes of what Fountainhead was. Like, I don't even know like what was it. I assume there was somebody incredibly successful and rich who was put upon by society and was
Sounds right.
I've no idea.
Sounds about
Yeah,
right.
sounds-
Jerry, do you have another puzzle piece you want to bring up?
You've been on an airplane, right? Like, you've seen those like instructional videos. What is it that like show you like what to do in the event of a crash?
Sure.
Imagine that, but like instead, like, all right. So Gina Carano in the movie, there's a moment where Hunter Biden and his like Eastern European business associates are all like having like assembly line style sex, all right next to each other. Gina Carano comes out. What is it? Addresses the camera. Like she's been doing.
She's
this
like
entire
green
movie.
screened. She's like green screened over
Right.
the three of
She's
them,
not
right?
even-
Her whole
Yeah.
everything.
She's not even there.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if she
Yeah.
had a clause in her contract that says I don't want to be around the sex stuff. But they green screened in Gina Carano to say, now Hunter Biden had no knowledge of whatever minerals that for his or whatever was doing.
Yeah.
So what do you think the real reason that they were keeping him around was? I'm like, you can't ask that question when Hunter Biden is bringing their friends to orgasm, because the answer any natural thinking person would come to is because he's cool. Like, because
That's
they would
like the
hang out with him for free.
That's what a cool person would do for their homie. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
So I imagined like a plain instructional video, but like about like instead of like what to do in the event of an emergency, what to do in the event that the emergency has already happened. Because I was like, your timing here is way off. Like if you want to do it like at the party or like when people are getting arrested or something, that's fine. But to do it while he's making someone very, very happy and
Yeah.
having a great time, if you're going to say,
No,
why would they want him around? Because that's fun for people to do.
I had a note about that scene right before that, Jared. I don't know if either of you guys caught this, but like this is the kind of shit that pisses me off. Like $2.5 million budget movie, and the character is mispronouncing Victor Yanukovych's name. She calls him Yanukovych.
Oh, yeah.
And that just bothered me. I was like, oh, come on, get that right. That's like such an easy detail. That guy's name was in the news every day from like 2010 to 2015. Like, and you're calling him Yanukovych? It's like, come on,
Yeah.
man, fix that shit.
I made a note of it. Another puzzle piece could be, what is it? Xenoblade Chronicles, which is a very, it's, for people who don't know, it's a Japanese, it's a JRPG video game where the dialogue is just very stilted and very bad. And I did make a note that when what's his name, Yanukovych or whatever, is sitting in a Orthodox church, that all the dialogue that he was saying to the other corrupt guys sounded like JRPG dialogue. So I would say,
and by the way, he's in that.
Chronicles could also be another.
And he's here. Okay, not VO'd either. It is a Ukrainian man in a room with a Ukrainian man, and then a third Ukrainian man shows up, and they have the entire conversation in English.
Yes.
That always pisses me off. I hate that
Yes.
shit when they do that in movies.
Well,
It's like,
conservatives hate subtitles, so I mean that
Apparently.
has been proven time and time
reading
again.
is kryptonite, I suppose. Like I don't know, but like yeah. I mean, Dave, do you have any more puzzle pieces? Remember, I had one that I was going to throw in here, which was
Yeah.
The Interview 2007. Not the interview with Seth Rogen.
Right.
In 2007, Steve Buscemi directed and starred in a movie called The Interview. So Sienna Miller plays like a Britney Spears type pop star in the Interview. The whole movie, it's an hour and a half, I think, of just Steve Buscemi playing this this sort of castigated, punished reporter who's used to covering, breaking political news and news of importance, and has been, because of a I guess, like, if I remember correctly, it's like a pending case of plagiarism that's haunting him, and that is going to come in and probably end his career at some point. He has been relegated by his editors to fluff pieces, basically, and he has to go. He's sent to interview this pop star in her lavish apartment in Manhattan, and the whole movie. It's a great movie. It's just Steve Buscemi and Sienna Miller in an apartment, and they go through this crazy like getting to know you phase to like I don't want to ruin it for anybody that's actually going to watch it because it's a fucking good movie. You really should watch it. But it ends in a very crazy, chaotic, unpredictable way. But the way that a big hunk of this movie was just Hunter and this woman, the
Right.
exotic dancer. The way that it was just them bearing their souls to each other after like after just meeting, ham-fisted as it was written, sure, but like it gave me a lot of those vibes. It was like, this is kind of interesting. There's just these two people, they're getting to know each other. I think we've all had that thing when like maybe not when we were 53-year-old men like Hunter Biden is in this, but like when we were younger, where you meet somebody and in one night you like feel super close to them, and all of a sudden you're bearing
Sure.
your souls to each other and shit, and then maybe you never see them again. Like we all have that shit. Like that happened to us at some point. So I kind of felt a little bit of overtones. Steve Buscemi never really did much directing after that, did he, Dave? He should have, because that was a good movie.
No, yeah, I did that movie Trees Lounge, but not much, only a couple of things. But yeah, I mean, I would hope that he would get back into directing at some point, especially as he gets older, because I mean, he's a good director, and I really want to see that movie. I haven't seen that, and it sounds great, and it sounds like all the good parts of this movie.
Yeah, it's
You know what I mean?
it's a great idea for a movie that you could have just. That's how I would have. If I only had $2 million to play with, first of all, I would have recast both parts, and I would have just made it that movie. I would have made it these two people bearing their souls to each other in an apartment on a night that kind of goes off the rails and changes both of their
Right.
lives. That's a better way to take $2 million and leave it all on the screen.
I had
Yeah.
one last puzzle piece, one last comparison. She-Hulk. Right now, there is a lot of anger that She-Hulk. The dialogue is very paint by numbers, Jezebel level feminist. Diatribe about how I know what it's like to be the whole angry like the Hulk because I get catcalled and talked down to and what have you, or the twerking and the soy banter with Megan Thee Stallion. The scene we were describing with the Secret Service agent and the stripper, where he's like, "Oh well, the problem here is you're using Google and the mainstream media when you need to be using DuckDuckGo and whatever else." I was like, you can't take issue with She-Hulk for the way that it operates as just like pandering to its intended audience, and then make media that is just the mirror image of that. Like, you are She-Hulk.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
if you got to make She-Hulk, you would make it, but in reverse. You wouldn't make a She-Hulk that I don't know what even they would do with She-Hulk. I mean, they would probably do this. They would probably make it that She-Hulk is going to be the one of the dancers at Hunter Biden's party that's going to take him to justice with her bare hands or something. But
That's a fucking movie.
I could see all the the fanfare and the hurt feelings that She-Hulk would have political opinions that were not their own. I was like, you can't complain about this type of media and then make this type of media, albeit on a much lower budget.
I've been kind of a defender of the She-Hulk TV show for two reasons. Number one, I have an 8-year-old little girl, and it's perfect to watch with her. It's like very, very few things are like, can her and I both sit and watch and enjoy, and that's one of them.
Sure.
And the other reason is that when I was her age, I read that 1990s run of She-Hulk that this is based off of. And this is actually nailing it. This is exactly how that run
Everyone
of She-Hulk
who watches the show says it's very faithful to the text.
Super
but my issue is not with She-Hulk. My issue is the reaction to She-Hulk, and then this kind of giving away that if you were in charge of She-Hulk, you would just make a conservative She-Hulk.
It's hypocrisy.
Pick your fucking position, guys. Pick your fucking position. Like, what do you, that for me, Dave, that does it. The only one that I wanted to throw out there, I think we kind of touched on at the beginning, which was Batman Begins, just the scene where he yells at everybody and kicks them out of the house.
Kicks him out of the party.
He kicks him out of the party. Remember in Batman Begins when Ra's al Ghul is there, he's like, "Get out!" Yeah, and it was before Christian Bale was really very good at getting rid of his accent, so like a little bit of the British came out. I was like, "You're all a bunch of leeches. Get out of my fucking house that I paid for." And so same thing with Laurence Fox, by the way.
Hunter doing that until She-Hulk is the only one left that doing
Yeah, that's a good one to go out on. I like it.
Wait, I have one question. Do either of you know? This is a plot question with this movie. And it's honestly, it's the biggest. If you guys are, if you're still listening to this episode and you're like actually into political shit and intrigue and like scandals or whatever fucking brain poison you need to be into, this movie posits very clearly and unambiguously that Joe Biden, famously the most poor member of the Senate, like in terms of personal value, like in terms of like he doesn't have he only has like something like $400,000 in net assets to his name, which is basically to be in the U.S. Senate and to only be worth $400,000 is almost suspicious. But they make the case that he literally was getting a cut of this illicit fund. Is that
percentage?
Is that like, has that been? I don't even want to say reported, but is that been alleged? Like I've never heard that.
Heard of that. Yeah,
that was the first time that I ever heard that Joe Biden was dipping his beak into whatever Hunter was doing and getting money, getting kickbacks on. That's a really big charge. And I mean, again, this is not a serious movie, but
you know, to that point, actually, I was going to bring up I, Tonya as one last piece for the whole, like, everything that you're about to see is true except for the parts we made up, wink, wink, you know, and like that whole kind of filmmaking, which is kind of, Adam McKay does that with a lot of his stuff as well. But like, there's a scene where Gina Carano like says, you know, what am I? I'm just a fictional character. And it's like, if she's fake, and if some of these other stories could potentially be fake, and if the Joe Biden thing you were just talking about, Q, could potentially be fake, at what point do you draw the line and you're just like, all of this is pure bullshit?
Yeah, but like, how much can you really take? But then again, for this audience, like, I think that Robert Davi's smart, and everybody, all the creative team on this is smart, because they know that when you approach it through a political valence like this, there's going to be forgiveness built in. Like, they're not going to hold your balls to the fire. Because they're your people, you know. They're your people.
I had a note about Joe Biden in this movie, which is I was struck that he spoke completely clearly, like never once faltered, never
like
once
twice,
stumbled, never once.
No, there was like one or two times he said erection instead of election,
right?
And then I think there was a second one.
But other than that,
they made him tough, though, basically.
They made him like a old union boss,
right?
Tough,
they start him off on the Saved by the Bell track where he, like you do when a son comes out in a bathrobe and a scarf and nothing else, says, you see, ever since I was a little boy, I wanted to be president of the United States. And then they get into a limousine to have a 40-minute conversation. Yeah, just giving your son your life story when he's dressed in nothing. And that's great. But I was also struck. I was like, he's speaking A to B without missing a step. I was like, this is poor.
You know what's funny?
Should have been gaff after gaff.
Because
just him being like, I always wanted to be the president of the United States. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I got to try that again. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys.
Come on, man. Yeah,
this actor is just too good.
Yeah,
basically.
Just him being like this, like mafia don of like, yes, as long as I get my 3%, we'll be perfully.
That rang so hollow.
So not anyone.
That's not him.
They're selling, like you said, Dave. If any part was like, this is obvious bullshit, it was Joe Biden being this like, I'm the real one driving the car. I was like, I don't think the car would have made it this far if Joe Biden was.
And then they go to show one of the biggest like political gaffes that he's ever made, which is going on I think it was like a World Equity Forum or something like that. Which this video does exist of him talking about the political machinations behind the scene to bring Ukraine in line with like the Russian sanctions, and I think he did that video in like 2015. Absolute stupid move. Like bar none. Joe is a great retail politician, but he's a dog shit like backdoor guy. He's horrible at that stuff. Everybody knows that. And to juxtapose the part that you're talking about, Jerry, where he's like, it turns out that he's actually this, like, he's not this happy, or he's not this like cutesy wootsy grandpa figure, and he's actually the mafia don. He's actually Vito Corleone or whatever. And show him doing the dumbest fucking thing that he's ever done in his political life, admitting to applying pressure to Ukrainian officials, like that. It undercuts your point if you think even more than just like 1 second ahead. You're like, so this guy's like an evil, brilliant mastermind that can't pronounce the word election and says erection, and also goes on back when he was even more lucid in the early 2010s or mid 2010s. He goes on the fucking on a public forum and admits to something that's going to end up biting him in the ass in the future. Like, none of it is cohesive. None of it hangs together. It doesn't make
The
any
thing
sense.
about, like, if you're driven by a life of crime, like either Vito Corleone or Joseph Robinette Biden,
Or me.
here's the thing. Here's the problem: is Bo's career trajectory was that of someone who's going to be president of the United States. If your one modus operandi is self-enrichment, you would not send Fredo out to be your emissary. You would send Michael.
Right. That's what the whole movie was about. God damn it. Oh my god.
Oh my god. I can't believe we did an hour on My Son Hunter. Is there anything that you guys didn't get to that you wanted to bring up before we wrap this up?
She's my mom, not my mommy. I really thought that was going to come back. I thought that whole thing was going to come back because we know that the one thing they didn't touch on in the movie was one of the revelations that came out from the laptop is that, like, Hunter hates Jill and calls her like a cunt and a bitch in real life and like in text messages and stuff. And the worst that they did was have him just kind of like in a very juvenile way, like say, she's my mom, not my mommy. And for those that don't know, Bo Biden and Hunter Biden, their mother and their sister too actually died. They mentioned this in the movie. It's Joe Biden's origin story, really, politically, is that his wife and his daughter died in a horrible car accident, I think in 1971, long time ago.
Right.
So like that's the context, but that line, I thought it was going to come back in some capacity later, and it didn't. He was just mommy issues shit. Just like, here's like some mommy issues. I don't know. Let's see what sticks, you know?
You know, we didn't talk about him getting high and talking to the dog in subtitled.
Completely forgot.
Speech
That
bubbles.
was probably your favorite part.
Oh, absolutely, by far. So I just want to, talk about it for a second. But, this movie could have leaned into shit like that. And it could have just been absolutely bonkers and gotten a bigger platform, based on word of mouth to get these ideas of the Bidens being evil and all this shit, like, into people's minds. But instead they just botched it and made a boring ass movie that no one's going to want to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a question to end this on, Dave, and I'd love to hear what both of you think. Where did this movie happen? Where were we during this movie? Like that, and I ask that because that's, to me, a litmus test for like movies generally, to be like, okay, do I have a sense of place? Like what? Like I like, first of all, it's in 2019, which doesn't make sense. It should have been 2020, whatever. But like, were we in Chicago? Were we in Delaware? Were we in DC or like Northern Virginia? Were we like, where the fuck were we? Because it felt like we were on a soundstage in like in exurban Atlanta or something, which is probably where it was, because
Georgia provides a lot of tax breaks to have stuff filmed there too, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was Atlanta.
And a lot of Georgia can pass for upstate New York City. Like, oh my god, how many fucking Marvel movies have there been where it's clearly downtown Atlanta and like the Hulk is smashing through it, and you're supposed to think that it's it's Midtown or something like that. Sure.
I can tell you, I just pulled up an article. I was very surprised. Part of the filming took place in Serbia.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
actually makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense
because of its relatively low cost, scenery that could resemble Ukraine, and according to McAleer, whoever that is, the ability to cast in a way to help depict Hunter's lifestyle. I would not be surprised if they went the Safdie route of just asking people who do this for a living anyway to play essentially themselves in the movie.
It's like, oh well, that if you're in GRMT time, that there's no union wages there. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay union rates in Romania and Serbia and shit like that. That makes sense.
Authenticity.
But like, again, but even still, it makes perfect sense here that's where they shot it. But like, where were we supposed to be? Like, was that supposed
we're supposed to be wherever politicians are. Like, those.
So like Northern Virginia, like it could have been Delaware because that's their home state, and the Bidens are still very present physically in Delaware. Like, I just don't know, and it speaks to the weakness of the movie. Like, for all it could be fucking Serbia.
It was Serbia.
It literally was Serbia.
Guys, this movie was bad, but I always end these conversations asking for a recommendation of a movie you watched recently. Jerry, a movie you watched recently.
I will say this: as you know, depending on the weather, you're gonna. Well, hurricane season's coming up if you're in Florida, and I don't know what happens in Las Vegas if there's even a slow season. But I watched it. It's a 4-hour movie. It's called An Elephant Sitting Still. It was made by a guy. I think his name is Hu Bo, in China. He committed suicide. This was the only movie he made. He was in his late 20s. This is the one thing that he made. Essentially a look at it's a dramatization of people who, even amid a great surge in economic development and prosperity, you know, the hundreds of millions of people who were lifted from poverty to middle class existence in China, the people who were never lifted, and the types of lives they lead. And it's work of fiction, but I found it to be very powerful. So if you can sit through a very dreary 4-hour movie with subtitles, I would strongly recommend doing it. It's called An Elephant Sitting Still. I can promise you will not be disappointed.
Oh, it sounds really interesting. I would definitely love to check that out. What about you, Q? What do you got?
Okay, so over on HBO Max, I came across, and I would recommend like whatever you like on HBO Max, like watch it, because I don't know, man, it looks like they're gonna fucking get rid of everything good over there in the next few
Probably.
months or whatever.
Yeah.
But something I hadn't seen in probably since the movie actually came out and before it is the limited series Watchmen motion comic, which is incredible. It takes the original Watchmen book, the graphic novel, and it renders it as a motion comic in a very interesting, very like visceral, engaging way. It's no, Damon Lindelof shit. It's like it's very loyal. Obviously, it's straight from it's the comic book. It is the comic book, but it's split up into 18 books, basically, just like I think the original run was. And yeah, we talked a little bit about comic book shit on this episode. So like, I fell down the rabbit hole of watching that when I had first watched it back in like maybe 2008. Another thing where it was during an era of my life where I was just drunk on the couch a lot, and so like I was just like, oh, pretty colors, it's cool. But I rewatched it recently, and it's fucking really good. And you forget how good that comic book was, and it does not take any liberties. It is a faithful recreation of Alan Moore's seminal work.
Awesome, great recommendations, guys. Tell us where people are going to be able to find the podcast.
Yeah, you can find us on walt.com, which is WAWLT.com. You can find us anywhere by the time this comes out, anywhere that podcasts are available by searching Why Are We Like This? There's a couple of other like shitty low rent podcasts that like aren't in business anymore that had that name, but by the time you hear this, we will probably have surpassed them in search engine optimization. Will probably be the first result that you see, and you can tell because there's a big Florida flag on our logo. So Why Are We Like This is the name of the podcast. You can check out when this comes out. The first 3 episodes are already up, so you'll be able to check that out. And yeah, WAWLT.com. You can follow Jer. Where are you at on? You want to share your Twitter?
Sure, I'm at Tostone Soprano on Twitter, and I am at Poppy Seed Bagel, PAPI Seed Bagel on Instagram.
And I'm at David_Quinones on Twitter if y'all want to follow me.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for doing this, and I'm looking forward to hearing the podcast.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks very much.
I'm Josh Bell.
And I'm Jason Harris, and we co-host a podcast called Awesome Movie Year.
Each season, we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year.
We deep dive into these specific years, and we pick out why they were such great years for films. We go over the biggest hits, the biggest flops, the best picture, some personal picks, some cult classics.
Years we've covered in past seasons include 1994, 2003, 1977, and 1984, and we've got all of film history to look forward to. So check us out at awesomemovieyear.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about My Son Hunter. Thanks to Q and Jerry for joining me on that one. Make sure to go check out Why Are We Like This? The first 3 episodes are out now, and I'm looking forward to taking a listen to it as well. And while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together. If you like what we do here on the show, drop those 5 stars. And if you listen to this conversation and you're on the right and you're offended, don't drop 1 stars. I'd appreciate it if you didn't do that. But anyway, yeah, follow us, subscribe. Also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And don't forget, we have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, as well as bonus episodes from Awesome Movie Year and stuff from my music career. Lots of great stuff to check out there. And don't forget, tomorrow is the live show in Glendale, California at the Look Dine and Cinema, sponsored by Cinema Week. We will be talking about See How They Run. And the episode will be up next week on the podcast. But if you want to come watch the movie for free and then listen to us talk about it, my guests are Rosa Parra from Latinx Lens and Raul Navedo and Colby Mack from Minorities Report. It's going to be a fun conversation, a fun time. If you want to come out, check out the link in the show notes and sign up for free tickets. It's tomorrow at the time this goes up. So, yeah, September 22nd, 7 p.m. So, let's close out with a piece of music like I always do. And, you know, this getting all political and stuff. A couple years ago, I was actually supposed to do music for a political podcast. I've been a part of a couple of political podcasts now. This one in particular fell through, never actually got off the ground, but I did make the theme music for it. And so I might as well just play that right now. That'll work. So this is an unreleased, actually, it never happened podcast intro theme, but I'm going to play it. Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
I have a dream that one day
And so, my fellow Americans,
this nation will
ask
rise
And
not
it's just plain common sense
what your government
that there
can do
be
for
a
you.
waiting
Ask
period
what
to
you
allow
can do
local
for
law
your
enforcement officials to conduct background checks on those who wish to suspect
And you know what else you said about me in the past? You said I am the most search thing. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of the thing and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.